the topic today, permission to feel attractive. By the way that I kind of go about these talks, I'm just going to start to go. I'm going to channel stuff. I'm going to be talking, ranting, just letting things move through me. If you ever have a question or a comment, just raise your hand so that we can bring it into the conversation. All right? When I first wrote this down as a topic, and most of my topics I come up with during the week as things are coming up, or the morning of, or as I'm standing here, I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Right? Today, this one's been hitting me a lot because I look around the community, I look around marketing that people are putting out there, I look at all this stuff where I see a lot of us being attractive, but not feeling attractive. There's this big difference. A lot of us are being attractive, but we're not feeling attractive. Do you guys get what the difference is on that? Like, and I might offend some people with this, but sometimes I look at some of the marketing out there for goddesses and, you know, these kind of things, and there's a lot of exposure is the best way I can say it in some of these images. And so there's maybe an attraction there, but there's not a feeling. You can't feel somebody's confidence. And I think that's what real attraction is. It's the confidence of something. By the way, we're not just talking about attraction physically. It's, are you giving yourself permission to attract things to your life that you want? See, that's where the difference is. Because if you're feeling attractive, if you're feeling that potency and confidence and that positivity, you're going to attract the same. It's a magnetism, right? But if you're feeling different, but you're trying to, we'll say, billboard yourself differently, you're going to attract whatever you're billboarding, but you're also going to attract what you're really feeling. And if that's a feeling of lack, of scarcity, of unworthiness, you're going to attract people who will validate that for you. So this has been a big topic as I look around and I see, especially, maybe you've noticed this in the yoga community over the years. You know, yoga was this ancient philosophy of, you know, internal practice and cultivation, and then it became about brands and yoga mats and, you know, how good did you look doing your posture. It became about being attractive and not feeling attractive, not feeling the power, the stability, really the confidence of who you are. And in a lot of the work that I do, so I call myself a heart coach. Somebody called me a heart ninja the other day, which I really liked. By the way, if ever you hear me say ninja strategy, what's that? Yes! You can join in on that. I love doing it. Sometimes when half the class knows it, the other half is like, what the hell, just, oh my God. So there's this idea of, can we approach life and ourselves from a place that ninjas, what's that? Yeah. The stories or the thoughts or the blocks or the beliefs or the limitations that are keeping us from being the confident, beautiful, radiant self that we actually are all the time. And this is what I really mean by, can you feel attractive? And there's another word in this that's quite important, permission. Permission to feel attractive. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go to your partner, your family member, or some close friend and be like, hey, can you let me know if it's okay for me to be attractive today? It's more about the permission you give yourself, because so often we're actually denying ourselves things, right? And we don't even know we're doing it. But let me backtrack a little moment here. How many of you, when you wake up in the morning, whether you're waking up alone or you've got somebody else next to you, when you wake up and you got like the bed face and the shins and like it's all wrinkled up because of the sheets and you're like, oh. Are you feeling attractive in that moment? Why not? Nothing changed when you went to bed the evening before, when you were out the day before. Nothing changed about who you are. So why would it change? Because you're externally looking at it, right? You're going, no, I don't look attractive right now. I'm not being attractive right now. Doesn't matter, you can still feel attractive. It's one of the most beautiful things to see when somebody, you can tell, maybe somebody who has a handicap, or maybe somebody who is just struggling with something, or has had to make a major shift in their appearance because of a disease or disorder or things like that, or an accident, yet they still come out in life and they're like, hey! And they're fully confident in themselves. That's the most attractive quality that we have, is our confidence of owning who we are in our full authenticity. That's actually one of the things, I used to have it on my business cards. Before I went by the Heart Coach title, I used to say I was an authenticity muse. And so I would say authenticity is the most attractive quality that you have. Authenticity is absolutely the most attractive quality that you have because there's nothing hidden. You see, so often we don't realize that the energy doesn't lie. And so it doesn't matter what you put on as a mask, doesn't matter what you put on in your words, how you're feeling, and therefore being into the world, that's what tells somebody where you're at. And if you're saying something but you're not feeling it, there's a discrepancy. There's something that goes, wait a second, this person's not telling me the whole truth. And I don't like being lied to, so I don't like them. Right? And that's unconscious. It happens at a really subtle level. So authenticity allows us to see each other fully. Allows us to just step up and be like, this is who I am. I'll give you an example. How many of you have a friend who's a complete asshole? Just a jerk, but they own it. They're like, yeah, that's who I am. And you're like, I love you. Right? Right? Because they're being authentic. Because there's nothing hidden. But if somebody, like, you have a lot of people that'll be like super, super sweethearts. They're like, oh, it's so nice. I love seeing you all the time. And you're like, something's off here. I don't know about you. Right? Authenticity, it's one of the greatest things. But to be authentic means we have to be confident in who we are. And a lot of times we're not. A lot of times we're looking back at ourselves and we're going, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I'm going to say something really counterintuitive here. It's all true. You're not enough. You're not worthy. You're not lovable. But not because of who you are in your complete self. The wholeness of you is 100%. That's enough. The mathematics. But the fact is, you've divided yourself up into all sorts of different places. Percentages of you in experiences, in traumas, in high points and low points, in defenses and walls of protection. You've put yourself all over the place, and so all that's left is maybe 10 or 20%. So when you look back, you're like, I'm not enough. There's only 20% there. So we have to start to collect ourselves back. And that means looking at the things that we've left behind, our baggage and things like that, reclaiming it, not trying to fix it. I get this all the time when I'm working with clients. You know, they'll be like, well, if only I could go back and do it different. You can't, that's the past. We can't go backwards, time travel hasn't started yet. But you can go forward and make a new future. And that's what we forget because we're trying to fix this instead of build something else. Sometimes I get sidetracked. Hold on. How are you guys doing, by the way? Awesome. Any questions already? It looked like you were like,
no.
All right, good. So this idea of, yes, yeah.
I was just processing things. Did you make this shift yourself?
Great question. So she's asking, have I made this shift myself to full confidence, to being this and that? No. I come up here, I'm playing a role.
No, but like this, I mean, you entered this path, or you got to this journey for a certain reason, right? So obviously there was something going on in the past.
Yeah. So let me.
How did you transform from A to B?
Good question. So let me expand my response here. The answer, first off, is no, I've not made the full transition or the shift. I think we are all always in development. And so that's really my response to that is I'm always in development. I've made a lot of development. I might have a lot of experience and knowledge and wisdom that you guys don't. And you might have a lot that I don't. That's where we get to learn from each other, and I love that, right? And the idea is more to stay open in the curiosity. So often in these classes or in coaching client sessions, people will ask me, but how do I do it? And my response is almost always, you shift to curiosity. It's the first step every single time. Because if you're not curious about something, then you're not open to a new possibility. And if you've set yourself, let's say, especially in this topic today, you've set your mind, no, I'm the person everybody ignores. I'm the person that's not beautiful enough. I'm not the person that attracts anything. It's not for me. I'm not worthy. All these things. Well, then that's what you're going to keep attracting, and that's what you're going to keep developing because you're focused on it. Until you have the possibility, the permission, to give yourself some new direction. And that's the key, is really to give this permission. So in all of my talks, I always end up sharing about 3 core pillars that I live by. It's acceptance, permission, and expression. Acceptance, permission, and expression. And these are like a clarity model. It's a way of finding out what's really going on in my life, my reality right now. And how can I allow for it to move and shift and change and develop and grow. So we start with acceptance. And acceptance is kind of this idea of, are you okay to be who you are authentically? Are you okay to see the recognition of where you're at right now and let yourself build from that? Here's a good example. How many of you have started a class of some skill set, something you've never done before, or maybe you did a little bit, and you entered? Maybe it's a yoga class, you accidentally went into the intermediate or advanced, and you're a beginner, and you walk in there, and you see people like just on their heads, no hands, they're like, brrr. And you're like, oh boy. And all of a sudden there's a mentality, a thought pattern that goes, oh, yeah, I'm not enough. I'm just not going to start. See, we have to be okay with where we're starting from. So often we are in such a rush to get to the thing that's like the expert level mastery, perfection of something. That's not where anybody starts from, and that's really actually not a place that anybody gets to. We are always in development. And so acceptance is to realize that, to recognize, okay, whatever this moment is, whatever the reality of this is right now, I should recognize what it is in its fullness rather than in some delusion about it, rather than in some story about it. Because when I see it for what it is, then I actually have the power to move from it. Right? So if you look and you're like, oh no, I'm not like that, and so I can't do this, then you're in a story. But if you go, oh, okay, this is where I'm at, and they probably didn't start there, so let me start from here, and maybe I can build towards that. And it's the same, again, in our ability to be confident, or our ability to feel attractive. You may not be right now in this moment going, okay, well, your words sound great, but it's not that easy. I can't snap my fingers and suddenly be like, yes, I'm fully confident. I don't expect you to be. But can you give the possibility? And that's what moves us into permission. So we have acceptance to recognize the reality of where you're starting from, permission to allow for change, to give the possibility that there could be a different way, a different perspective, a new feeling that you could even have. If you ever listen to Tony Robbins, one of his biggest things that he talks about is state changes, right? The ability to change your feeling state, your emotion. And a lot of us think, well, yeah, but I can't do that internally. It has to be from some external thing. Oh, I'm so angry at this person until they apologize, until they do this, until they fix this problem. Then I can finally stop being angry. I'll give you an example. How many of you have a family member that you have a little friction with? Anybody? Right? Everyone's like, why do you think I'm involved? Right? And you're sitting here waiting for them to change. It's not going to happen. Right? Instead, what if you gave permission for a possibility of something new, and in that permission you start to open and build and cultivate something? So it has to start from there. It's a permission of opening up to new possibility instead of, and this is, we come back to the state change, right? So if you're angry at somebody, or if you're frustrated, or you're whatever, resenting or regretful, or all these things, those things that we would want to change, right? Don't wait for some external factor to tell you, hey, okay, now it's okay, you can change. It's on you. This is called ownership. You get to say, you know what, I actually have the power to change this. I'll give you an example, a personal one. Several years back, here in Bali, way before I met this beautiful queen of mine over here, I was in a quasi-relationship with this woman, and we got into a huge, huge argument. And we were on our way. We had to be going to meet up for dinner with some friends. And so we're like at our villa, we're arguing, and then we get on the bike, still angry. It's kind of like when you go to bed angry. It's not a good thing, right? We get on the bike, and the whole bike ride towards this restaurant, I'm thinking, I don't want to be angry. What I want is just to be happy. I want to just let this go, but I can't. And it was a weird mentality, and I think you guys can probably relate. It's because I went, if I just suddenly go from being angry when we got on the bike to getting there and just being like, hey, okay, everything's great, let's go. Is that bypass? Does that mean that I've, is she going to just think like, oh, he's just bearing that, this and that? And that's all a possibility. A lot of people do that. Or was it a choice? And is it okay to have that choice? Is it okay to actually, authentically, confidently go, you know what? I realize what I want, and it's not this. So I can just choose not to be in this emotion instead of waiting for something else to tell me it's okay not to be. So again, we tie it back to this idea here where this permission to feel attractive, it's a feeling state. You're the only one that can give yourself the permission. So many of us, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes even consciously, are doing so much to get the validation from somebody else to say, yes, you are attractive. But that never lands if your core belief is still negating it. That's why it has to start from within. You have to give yourself the permission. And again, we say this not just in the physicality of things or their appearance, but also in how well do you attract things into your life. How many of you have ever done a vision board or manifestation or affirmations, things like that, right? We're in Ubud, it's going to be a lot of you. And you started doing it, and maybe as you started to do it and you put a bunch of effort and energy into it and you got real creative, and then the very next day, or maybe even the next moment, a phone call comes or something, and it's that very thing that you were looking for. And how many of you were like, yes! And how many of you were like, oh my God, that's too quick. No, I'm not ready. I haven't proven myself worthy to have this thing that I want. So you're still waiting for somebody externally to give you the permission. This is a loaded topic today because we really actually are talking about emotions. We're talking about permission and the power that we have internally. And then with the hot topic of attraction, because that's something that, innately is strong for human beings. It's the first thing that we respond to. Something that looks attractive, right? It catches our eye. Yes?
I'm just sitting and thinking, would you agree that the permission to feel ... it can be attractive, rich,
Anything, yeah.
big, small, whatever, it's just about the permission in the essence of it, isn't it? So,
Yes.
like, so many people struggle with feeling of scarcity and not having enough, right? So
Yeah.
that would be a similar approach.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, the attractive part, you can replace with anything.
Yeah.
The importance is, and by the way, a lot of what my teachings are, again, it's this ape idea, right? Acceptance, permission, expression. And it's about coming into the heart. That's why I call these heart talks. And for me, coming into the heart is coming back into your power. The mind is calculative and comparative. It's not wrong. It has its function. But it means that it's always comparing, which means it's always going to be like, I'm either better or worse than this person, instead of I am this. And in knowing this, ownership of that, in my authenticity, and allowing that to be expressed and witnessed, that's my power, same as yours. Yeah.
You're talking a lot about the external, but there is also the internal, where in your own mind, there is a part of you that want to feel and want to allow yourself, and there is also sometimes the other part that's always in the negative side. And from time to time, you can allow yourself the super positive feeling like you're on the right path, and then suddenly a little thing or something will trigger you, and you will go back to a very negative and very powerful mind. So how do you manage those moments where you are on the right path, you feel that path, but you feel like you're also able to go back backwards?
Yeah. Great question. So she's asking, how do you manage the internal part of all of this? And that's actually more what I want to be speaking to. These are mindsets, these are beliefs, these are limitations and things like that. But the first thing is we have to be gentle with ourselves, right? Because a lot of times it becomes a snowball effect. That something happens that all of a sudden drops you back into the limiting belief or the judgment internally. And then we're like, oh, I was on such a good path. Why did I fail again? Oh, I'm failing again, and now I'm just a terrible person. Oh, and boom, 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 you're just falling down the hill even faster. Can I share about the sliding him out? So Christina and I joke around about this all the time. We both are guilty of it, that we'll be on this path, right? We'll be like, yes, I'm doing so good. Yeah. And we're going together because we're going in a relationship. We're like, yeah. Hey, where'd she go? And it'll be because we get very enthusiastic, or she'll look over and I'll be gone. And it's because you get really enthusiastic. You're like, yes, okay, I'm going. And this is what I call inauthentic confidence. You're like, I'm doing great. I've got it. I'm going to be enlightened. Whoa. You slide down the mountain. You see, it gets slippery footing when we start to identify to certain things and again are looking for the validation of that externally, just as you were just saying. So if all of a sudden we're going, yes, I'm doing so great, and we're doing that because we want to prove something, because we want somebody else to validate it, because we want the permission to feel it, you're going to slide, regardless, every single time. But if you're okay taking it step by step, slowly, authentically gaining the grounded footing of your own process, then even if you slip a little, you kind of go, oh, okay. You don't judge it. You just keep moving. Okay? So that's the first piece. You've got to be gentle with ourselves. Because a lot of times we are our worst critic. I know it personally. She's seen me just like spiral down sometimes. So we have to understand that. Then we also have to understand how our minds are working. Right? Our minds are thoughts. Thoughts are not real. They're just thoughts. They're things that we might agree upon. They're things that we might decide as fact. But again, they're just thoughts. And our thoughts can change our reality, or they can define our reality. And a lot of us in our youth, and this is why we have walls of protection in our comfort zones and things like that, in our youth have defined certain dangers in the world. Mostly those are dangers to our self-value. Physically, it's not normally really the thing. If you are here in Bali and able to be here in this class, it's because you probably have taken care of most of these survival needs. Right? We're very lucky in that. But we've got all these mental constructs that are telling us different, freaking out about things. And so yeah, you might be on that path, but then you have to look at, why are you on the path? Why are you so adamant to get further on it? Is it because you're motivated moving towards something, or is it because you're avoiding something internally that you know if you slow down too much, if you get still or peaceful or meditative or mindful enough, it's going to come up? I was talking to somebody just yesterday who just flew in from New York, and if you guys have ever met somebody from New York, they've got a lot of energy. And it was so funny because she was telling me in like hyperspeed, it's so hard for me to stay still. I don't know how to do it. And that's how most of us are, though. Maybe not at that extreme, but definitely internally, because the more we become still or silent, the more we have to face the demons of our own thoughts. And something just happened in the back there that was beautiful, so thank you for the vulnerability, that when we actually do stop, something happens. It's called release. But you have to stay there long enough in the discomfort. Can I give you guys a little bit of science? Because this is like a little abstract, but I'm going to give you some science, okay? Some psychology. This is from cognitive behavioral psychology. I just listened to a podcast recently and blew my mind away. You all know that you have core beliefs, right? These core beliefs, for the most part, are sectioned out into certain categories. There'll be things like hopelessness, helplessness, unlovability, what was the other one? Unworthiness, things like that. Very few of us were lucky enough to have an upbringing and an environment where our core beliefs from age 0 to 7 were actually things that just really gave us a positive outlook on life. Most of us, not by any means of maliciousness, but just because of society and how there's a lot more negativity that's loud and things like that, we tend to create these kind of core beliefs. And so then that's like the hard wiring in your brain. And no matter what you do externally, if you're not facing the hard wiring, you're just putting it on top. Which is why you can be doing so much, and then one thing will show you or prove to you again that core belief, and you'll dismiss everything else. You'll be like, nope, yeah, I knew it. Doesn't matter how much I've succeeded, how much I've achieved, I'm a failure. Right? How many of you experienced that? And this isn't just in our successes or in our power or things like that, or even our confidence. This is in love and relationships, romance. How many of you have been like, yes, I'm doing so much, I'm learning, I love myself, I've got so much self-love, and then you get in a relationship. You're like, I hate myself, I don't know why this is happening. It's because you got a little closer to the core, and the core will fight to remain that belief. And here's what happens at a cognitive level, okay? When you actually start to fight against, or not even fight because I don't like the word, pull against and shift that core belief, imagine you're literally ripping out wiring from your hard core system. There's going to be something called cognitive dissonance. It's really uncomfortable because your mind is like, I'm going crazy. Everything I have ever known myself to be is being challenged right now. And it gets really, really uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, certain emotions come up. And those emotions will sometimes be tears, sometimes be sadness, sometimes be fear, stress, all these things. What's that? Anger, yes, for sure. That's a big one. Because you'll be like, why have I been doing this? But you have to stay long enough in it. I gave a talk just yesterday at the Green School on 9 pillars of living from the heart. Patience was one of them. Because things don't happen in a snap of the fingers. It takes time, but it also takes endurance in that time. Because as you start to open and shift and transform the deepest parts of yourself, it is not going to be comfortable. And yet, the result is so worth it. Because if you can go there and you can just be there and you can let it come up, and you can, another big pillar is curiosity. If you can be curious about it instead of reactive, all of a sudden it starts to open and move and shift. And if you're there long enough, it disappears and you start to see yourself for who you really are, which I believe is potential. It's not defined yet. That's the beauty of it. So a few responses to what you asked. The first, be gentle. The second, be patient. The third, be curious. Because we never know what one level or one path or even a slip is going to do. But even when you slip, look at it. Be patient with it. Curious about it. Everything is a practice in life. And as we do, just a moment. As we practice things, and this is called a habit, right? Practice is consistent. It's not that you came for once a week a yoga class or because you were vacationing and then you're like, yeah, I've got a yoga practice now. No, it has to be consistent, okay? In that consistency, it builds momentum, and in that momentum, it builds confidence. And that's where we start to have the ability to feel attractive. What was your question or comment?
Why is it so easy for us as humans to give ourselves permission to the negative comments and for the negative emotions, yet it's so difficult for us to give ourselves permission for the
positive
nice
ones?
Comments.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do, again, with our upbringing. There's statistics that say that we're told no, how many times? Like 40,000 times to every... She's my, data bank. What?
By the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah, by the age of 4 or 5, say it to everybody.
Yeah, by the age of 4 or 5 years, I'm not sure, a child has heard 40,000 times no, compared to, I think, only 2,000 or 4,000 yes. So you're really being brought up in a negative way, because you're hearing more no than yes.
Yeah. So, again, what was the consistency? Or the majority was the negative. And because of that, we end up being a little bit hardwired to be looking for it. So the way we shift that is we have to make the positive significant. It's not that it's not there. It's actually, in the world, in our lives, in our reality, the positive and negative of everything is always balanced. Always. But even if there's, let's say, 50 little positive comments here and 50 negative comments, if you're just looking at the negative ones, you're going to be like, yeah, nothing's good in my life, this and that. Right? This is why I talk about permission, to see that there's a possibility, there's something different. When I work with clients, I'll be like, okay, so you've told me all the negative stuff that you're trying to get rid of. Tell me one positive. Like, oh, there's no positive. My life is shit. It's terrible. I can't, I go, and if there was one positive, what would it be? Well, it was nice when so-and-so said this. Oh, that's nice. Is that the first time you've heard that? Oh, no. People tell me that all the time. Oh, that's interesting. So how do you feel when that, oh, I feel great. Like, oh, and so the other day said, all of a sudden we shift the significance of our focus mentally, and it starts to shift the direction we're going in. So the problem is, though, we'll be like this, and, you've created a bank account of the negativity. And so it's like full. There's 100,000 coins of currency over there. And you're just starting to bring the focus over here and put a little coin or token or something over here. So then when a challenging moment comes up or a decision point or an opportunity, you're looking at your 2 accounts. And over here, the bankers are like, you want a loan? We'll loan you some negativity. We're happy to do it. Like, here you go. You pay us back in lots of credit. Or you have to very consciously, very committed, in practice go, I'm going to focus on this. And I'm going to put another positive token, another positive token, just a second. And as I do that over time, it'll grow. If I'm consistent, to meet this one, and all of a sudden this isn't a majority anymore. Go ahead.
I often have a fear that I love being positive, yes, but that it dissolves, it evaporates, you know? It's like, I'd rather not be positive just yet, because I'll use it for a better, honestly,
That's
as
great.
bizarre as it sounds, I think like that way, like
Oh, yeah.
sometimes, like,
Yeah.
wait, until the right time comes, and then I use it, because I have so little of it, you know? Because then
That's great.
negativity comes.
Oh yeah.
It's coming from this yin and yang
Oh, yeah,
situation,
yeah.
like, you know?
How many people can relate to that? I definitely can. That's hilarious. That's so true, though.
Yeah.
How many of you, when you've had a really good day, and there's literally a background thought that's like, I gotta go do some stuff. I should be productive right now because I'm feeling great. This is gonna go at some point. Let me make sure I use it. Right? Do you ever feel that way about your negative stuff? Like, ooh, I got some negative stuff. I gotta use it real fast. No, right?
How to shoot this?
This is hilarious. All right, so we're going to come back to this idea of focus and also an idea of abundance and scarcity, okay? Scarcity is when you believe that there's only a set limit of something. So if you think, oh, there's only this much positivity, and so you're like, well, I better guard it with everything. Abundance is to say, I know that the resource that I need, when I need it, is available. Maybe not in your hands already, but it's available. It exists. Okay? That's abundance, the simplest way I can define it. Abundance is to know that the resource that you need, when you need it, it exists and is available somewhere. Right? When you know that, then it gives you the permission to say, okay, maybe later on, I want to be positive, and I know it exists somewhere. In your choice, by the way. And then I can have it then. That's the simplicity of how you do it. But it takes practice. Because the mind's habit pattern will be pulling you towards the negativity where you're like, oh, there's an abundance of that. I got lots of it. Right? It doesn't really matter whether you believe there's a lot of something or a little bit of something. What really matters is the choice you make about where you focus. That's really the biggest priority. Where do you choose to focus? Because again, you can have 100 coins of currency and negativity and only 1 coin of positivity. And as long as you're just holding that coin and you're using that coin, you'll keep cultivating positivity. You have to make the choice to do that. Instead of living externally believing that the life and reality is conditioning you, you get to condition it. Does that make sense? Question? I keep feeling like there's a question.
Absorbing.
Good.
It all makes sense.
Yes.
Do you think it works the other way as well? If you have a child from 0 to 7, if it doesn't receive any negativity, you can overlove it.
It's a really great question.
Later on in life, when it does receive it, it won't know how to handle it.
Yeah, great question. So she's asking, if in those very, very important, significant years of child development, if you just inundate the child with positivity and make sure they never experience negativity, will that possibly not end well? The story of Gautama Sakyas, the original Buddha, is that very story. He was a protected prince, right? His father literally did not want him to see suffering at all because he'd been given, this is the mythology, he'd been given this prediction that his son would either be a great ruler and carry on the throne, or that because of his compassion for the suffering in the world, he would become this spiritual leader. So the king's like, well, I don't need a spiritual leader, I need an heir. So no suffering for you. And he quarantined him, right? So the reason I bring that up is there's a big difference between authentically, confidently, sincerely giving yourself the permission to share that with a child and doing it because you're trying to protect them. Because the energy never lies. They will feel the energy of what's being hidden here, what's really going on. And they'll have doubt issues and they'll have insecurities and all this other stuff. It's more about be real. If there's something negative, explain it to them. Also, in your own modeling of things, you keep choosing to focus on the positive, but not negating that there is negative, right? If we try to say that this other stuff doesn't exist, then what we're doing is we're actually keeping a focus on it, because that takes a lot of effort to dismiss something. It takes a lot of effort to ignore something. It takes a lot of effort to hold stuff down. You guys ever felt it, like when you're in a public situation and emotion starts to come up and you're like, this is inconvenient, this is not the right time? Not easy to push that down. It's actually much easier to let it up. So that would be my response to that, is it's not about choosing to be like, okay, I'm just going to make sure they only see this. Then you'll be like helicopter parent. It's more about, I'm going to make sure they understand how to handle all things in life, and that they have the power to choose, and that gives them confidence. Easy way to relate that is for people who have grown up in the countryside or on farms or things like that, you know, they're always playing in the dirt and things like that, their immune system is rock solid. People who have grown up very secluded in like sterile environments, somebody sneezes on them, they're like, oh! You know? So it's about being exposed to things, but knowing you always have the choice, that you do have a power of how you respond to it, the story you make up about it, and what you then carry forward. That makes sense?
When the kid thing, Finding Nemo, comes to mind.
I love that.
Watch that.
Yeah.
Seen it like a million times.
Did you guys hear Finding Nemo, the movie? That's a great example.
Finding Nemo, the cartoon.
Yeah.
I've seen it like a million
Yeah.
times. I'm just a big kid at heart with my friends' kids. And it is like such a beautiful example of the overbearing parent and like the going off and
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love that. Yeah. No, it's great. That's authenticity. I love it. Let's jump back to the topic at hand. We diverged a little bit, but it's all related. Permission to feel attractive. Again, it comes back to worthiness. It comes back to what's the confidence that you've built for yourself. To know that when that package arrives of support, of assistance, of resources in your life, it's the knock of opportunity on your door, that it's for you. That it's actually for you. This is a big one. Because do you guys know that? That the opportunities that show up in your life, they showed up in your life for you. Why do you reject them? Can you give permission to say yes to the possibility and allow yourself those things? How many of you, when somebody gives you a compliment, you struggle? Right? I used to, but now I love it. Like, people will give me a compliment, and you know, normally the etiquette is to give a compliment back, right? Exactly. Like, but that's because you're afraid to let it come in. It's like a little ping pong match. Now people will say something to me, I'm like, thanks. Walk away, they're like, oh, I was kind of expecting something. Yes.
On the contrary, sometimes I feel like life gives me opportunities, or sending me similar opportunities, which is purely for me to be strong and keep rejecting them, because I know they're not serving me. It's like, I'm going to give an example of meeting the same guy every time. And I know that's not the guy for me, totally. It's keeping sending me that same guy, like in a different kind of expressions, but I know it's not the guy for me. And every time, I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, no, it's not. So, no, what I'm trying to say, sometimes it's just, I feel I don't need to take every opportunity every time, but also learn from it and be strong by saying no. I don't know when it stops. Sending it.
Yeah.
But
And this is why I say, you say yes to the possibility, not to the opportunity, to the possibility. There's a big distinction there, okay? It's not saying yes to the things, the actions, the behaviors, or the whatever is being presented. It's saying yes to the possibility. Because when you do that, then you can have a lesson, you can choose, you can make a distinguished or distinctive choice about it, all these kind of things. Now I want to speak really quick to this, because this is great, right? And it kind of speaks to what you're attracting, okay? How many of you have the same issue? That the things you have been working for so long on, that you are challenged by, that you don't like about what's coming into your life, just keeps coming, right? And you're like, universe, come on, I thought we had a deal. First thing I'm going to say, and this is totally anti-Ubud, the universe and the cosmos has nothing to do with it. It's not because of Mercury retrograde. It's not this. Take ownership. It's your own thinking. It's your own beliefs. You have to see that. Because if you don't, then you can't change it if you're waiting for something else to, right? So in the context of, you keep attracting the wrong person. It's not that you're attracting the wrong person. It's that you're still afraid of attracting the wrong person. That makes sense? And for as long as you're still afraid, you're still focused on it. If you're still focused on it, you're telling your mind, your psychology, this is very significant. This person who does not fit. Very, very significant. So your mind's like, okay, let me scan. That one's good, that one's good, that one's good. Yeah, they're all not a good fit. You've told me that's significant. So these are who I will show you. You guys get that? That's how our minds work. You tell it something significant, and it doesn't know negative or positive. It just knows significance. And so you say, this is very significant for me to remember. Well, then it's going to show up a lot in your life, which is why you get to make the choice consciously to go, I will consciously choose to make significant in my mind and in my life the things that I want, not that I'm avoiding. I say this a lot in my heart talks, and it's a big philosophy in my life, and Christina and I follow this a lot too. This idea of, can we turn from what we're avoiding towards what we're desiring, what we want in our lives, right? And for a lot of us, the things we're avoiding is what's familiar. We know it, so there's a sense of control and familiarity and actually stability in that. Whereas the stuff that we want, we don't have assurance or certainty that we get to have it because we still have these core beliefs that are saying, maybe I'm not worth in this and that. But the only way to create the confidence, the only way to create a little more certainty, the only way to create the significance is to be willing to drop what's familiar, especially if it's not serving you, and move into this unknown space and allow yourself to start to move towards what you want. It comes back to abundance and scarcity, to know that what you want is available and exists in the world. How many of you looked over, let's say it's in relationships, right? And you're looking over and you see like Christina and I, and you're like, man, I want that. Why do they have that? They cultivated it. It was not easy at the beginning, right? Relationships take cultivation, and that's not just in romance, but that's in anything you relate to in life. It takes a cultivation, a decision, a choice to do it. To seek out the parts that you want and to express those, communicate those, and to develop them. So this is a key in that, is you have to realize that, and I mentioned the thing about being envious or jealous, because it tells you it exists in the world. So many of us will look at somebody's success or their happiness or their joy or whatever, or their skills in a yoga class, things like that, and we become jealous or envious instead of being like, oh, thank God, I was a little worried it didn't exist in the world. Now I know it does. And, this is the second part, I'm worthy to have that too. There is nothing that made them different than you, other than they chose to be worthy. You can do the same. Permission to feel attractive. Permission to attract that into your life. And by attraction, really it just means permission to choose it, because it's already in your life. It's a bit of a fallacy, this whole law of attraction, because things are not like waiting in some shipping yard for you to order them and be like, oh, okay, I feel worthy now, let me order this and then I'll wait for it to come to me. No, it's right at your doorstep already. It's right there. But again, with the significance that you've said to your mind, if you were saying, okay, the thing that I'm staying focused on as being significant is all the things I don't allow for myself, that's all you see. The second you actually give the possibility that you are worthy, boom, right there, you see the stuff that's been sitting there, waiting. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah. I think from what I understand, from this talk is permission to feel attractive, and mostly from what I see, so you coming from the inside.
Yes.
Right? As far as I understand, I don't really understand.
Yes, perfect.
But what I'm saying also, my question is like, what about from the outside? You can see different here, I say like the people, the outside part, like for example, like I give example like Balinese have a ceremony to attend this morning, maybe,
Yeah.
They cannot, they cannot sit and listen to your very nice speech or whatever. But for you guys, it's easier, you know. So what about that privilege, do you think?
Privilege. Ooh, good question. Ooh, coming in hard from the back. Woo. All right. Privilege. Great question. Doesn't have anything to do with where you're coming from, who you're with, what culture, anything. As you said, it's internal, right? So it doesn't matter if your culture says you have to spend time over here and therefore you can't do personal development over here. It's still a choice. It's always the choice internally. And this is something that we often, again, we're waiting for the external to change instead of the internal. If we're going, oh, well, that's great, you can have that, and you can do that, and you can feel amazing and confident because you have everything, it doesn't, that's not why they have it. They have it because they chose to believe that they could. And that's the key, it's the permission, right? Is to believe that, wow, no matter what circumstance I'm in, some of the greatest inspirations in the world came from the meekest of places, the least of resources, you know, and some of the most dramatic of histories. And they chose to go a different path. So it's the choice that's the most powerful, right? And when we do, and I see this a lot in different cultures, I don't actually see it that much here in Bali, but you go to Mexico or Latin cultures where there's a huge divide between the poor and the rich, or anywhere really that's kind of the case. And there will be such a massive sense of entitlement and resentment in the poor, where they're like, well, if you have all that and it was just given to you, I should have it too. You should just give it to me. Right? Or even you see this anywhere in the West where people be like, all these billionaires, they have so much money, why aren't they solving the world's problems? That's not their responsibility. It's yours to individually work on yourself.
Yeah, and the majority of those rich people, they started somewhere.
Exactly. Exactly. Please go ahead. Exactly. They started somewhere else, or even, yeah, or even if they were given a silver spoon, it was the choices they made, and you have the same power to make those choices. And for as long as we, yeah, what's that?
It doesn't make them happier.
And exactly, and that's the thing. You know, when we talk about confidence, it's an internal sustainability. When you have people who are doing external things, no matter how much they succeed, no matter how beautiful they make themselves, no matter how much they do external, they're always going to still be seeking a validation to hold that position. And the moment it's not there, they crash down to the core belief.
So I think what he also meant is like, what about the pressure from other people? Because he, as a Balinese, like he has to attend certain things or ceremonies which he doesn't want, but there's like so much pressure, and I think how do you deal with that to make your own choice, to stay true to yourself?
Good question. Yeah. Yeah, good question. So we actually gave a talk a few weeks back on peer pressure and peer support. And it really came back down to, again, the internal conversation of, you know, what's the self-pressure and what's the self-support that we're giving ourselves. So when we're afraid to speak what we want, if it goes against our culture or against our community, it's not because we're afraid of speaking what we want. We're still focused on what we're avoiding, which is I don't want to be disregarded. I don't want to be disowned. I don't want to be pushed out. I don't want to be different, right? Or I don't want the people around me to be angry or offended by me. All these things. If you can make the shift to understanding what you want and then expressing it, you could still be attending these things, but from a totally different perspective, a different energy, right? Instead of an obligation. Right? And hopefully there can be communication. But we can't always count on the external to agree. But the point is, the more you focus on and express the things that you want, without negating the other, right? Without saying the other is bad. It's simply your choice. It's kind of like, you know, when you're coming out of a relationship and, you know, one or the other is kind of, they'll say, it's not you, it's me, right? And we look at that and we're like, yeah, whatever. But it's true. Whatever choice somebody makes is their choice. And it has nothing to do with you. So often people will be in like the relationship hangover, where afterwards they're like, I don't know why they left me. I thought I was doing everything right. I thought things were good. Things probably were great, but they made a choice. Right? Or things were not great, but it doesn't matter. The choices we each individually make. Does that mean that that's going to solve your problem? I don't know. But at least it moves you into a different state of being that's a little more confident because you get to be you. Right? You can still expressing who you are, let me, because I never got to expression actually. I talked about APE, right? The acceptance, permission, and expression. Acceptance, recognizing the reality of where you're at. Permission, allowing for it to change, which means there has to be the idea that there's a possibility that things could be different, that your feeling about it could be different. The external world isn't always something we can actually control, but the internal world is, so we can feel different about things. And finally, expression. Expression is not what we project into the world. Like all that I'm doing right now, I'm projecting thoughts with you. I'm sharing them. But expression is my being witnessed in it. It's you getting to see what my truths are. It's my authenticity. It's my vulnerability. And the same for all of you. It's to be seen for who you are. That's expression. And so when you start to give the confidence or cultivate the confidence to share the things that you want, even if you don't get them, it's okay, but you're sharing them, that starts to give you real expression, and in that, stuff starts to change automatically because you're not hiding anymore. So much more energy becomes available to actually move into the things that you would like, or to see how to be in the things that you don't. As long as they're not physically harming you, right? We can shift the mentality. So often I'll see people maybe in a workplace, right? And they're yeah, I'm going over a little bit here. Is everybody okay still?
Yeah.
Cool. So a lot of people will be in a workplace and maybe it's a job they absolutely don't like. And they'll blame the people at the job, they'll blame this and that and all these things, or even if it'll be a place, like a lot of times people come to Bali or other places and they'll be like, no, this just really isn't working for me, and like you start making your plans to leave. And then you meet somebody. Or some small thing changes, maybe like a new program starts up, or something that you're actually interested in. And all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I want to stay, everything's great. It wasn't the thing, it was simply that you gave yourself the possibility to see something new. We come way back to the beginning. We notice only what we decide to focus on, but if you give the possibility that there could be other things, such as right now, in your question, it might be like, well, this is our culture, this is how our ceremonies go, and there's no other choice. And so then there's going to feel pressure and oppression and like all this stuff, and you're going to feel frustrated because you don't get to do what you want. What if there's a possibility that you could have both? That you could be having the connection with your community and at the same time, the connection with your internal desires and what you really want to be and express into the world and be seen for. They can both exist. But you have to say yes to the possibility to find how, because it'll be different in everybody's circumstance. I'm going to summarize real quick what we've been talking about today. We started off with the topic of permission to feel attractive. And the permission to feel attractive is really a choice that we get to have. To say, you know what, even if I have certain core beliefs or limiting ideas and thoughts within my mind, I have the power to choose and cultivate a confidence of the things that I want to be and feel. And in that starts to move me from this place of not feeling the permission or the power to actually understanding the power that is innately in me. And from that, you start to shift your life. And the permission to be attractive, again, is about everything. It's not about just physicality and to be validated. That's still external. But it's to feel attractive internally. And so I leave you with one last thought. And this will probably resonate more for the women, maybe some of the guys. You know, and I heard this is going to be so funny to be me saying it as a guy. I heard something that really surprised me a couple years back about lingerie. I'm going to leave you guys with a real thought here, okay? I actually asked Christina about this, and I was like, well, but you know, when you get that sexy lingerie, isn't that still you just wanting to prove you're sexy to a partner, this and that? And she told me something. She's like, no, like, I just like knowing that I have it underneath my clothing. It makes me feel confident. And I think this resonates. And the same for guys. Like, if you know that, like, you got, like, your rocket ship boxers on, you're like, yeah, right? You know? There is a sense of inner confidence in that does not need external validation. And that's what I leave you with about being attractive. Thank you, everybody.